Letter 29 of Letters from Egypt by Lady Lucie Duff-Gordon. Read for LibriVox.org into the public domain. To Mrs. Austen, Sunday, February 7, 1864. Dearest Mother, we have had our winter pretty sharp for 3 weeks, and everybody has had violent colds and coughs. The Arabs, I mean. I have been a good deal ailing, but have escaped any violent cold altogether, and now the thermometer is up to 64 degrees, and it feels very pleasant. In the sun it is always very hot, but that does not prevent the air from being keen, and chapping lips and noses, and even hands. It is curious how a temperature which would have been summer in England makes one shiver at Thebes. Alhamdulillah, it is over now. My poor Sheykh Yussuf is in great distress about his brother, also a young sheykh, i.e., one learned in theology and competent to preach in the mosque. Sheykh Mohammed is come home from studying Al-Azhar at Cairo, I fear to die. I went with Sheykh Yussuf, at his desire, to see if I could help him, and found him gasping for breath and very, very ill. I gave him a little soothing medicine, and put mustard plasters on him, and, as it relieved him, I went again and repeated them. All the family and a lot of neighbours crowded in to look on. There he lay in a dark little den with bare mud walls, worse off, to our ideas, than any pauper, but these people do not feel the want of comforts, and one learns to think it quite natural to sit with perfect gentlemen in places inferior to our cattle sheds. I pulled some blankets up against the wall, and put my arm behind Sheykh Mohammed's back to make him rest while the poultices were on him, whereupon he laid his green turban on my shoulder, and presently held up his delicate brown face for a kiss like an affectionate child. As I kissed him, a very pious old mullah said Bismillah, in the name of God, with an approving nod, and Sheykh Mohammed's old father, a splendid old man in a green turban, thanked me with effusion, and prayed that my children might always find help and kindness. I suppose if I confessed to kissing a dirty Arab in a hovel, the English travellers would execrate me, but it shows how much there is in Mussulman bigotry, unconquerable hatred, etc., for this family are Sayyids, descendants of the Prophet, and very pious. Sheykh Yussuf does not even smoke, and he preaches on Fridays. You would love these Sayyidis, they are such thorough gentlemen. I rode over to the village a few days ago to see a farmer named Omar. Of course I had to eat, and the people were enchanted at my going alone, as they are used to see the English armed and guarded. Sidi Omar, however, insisted on accompanying me home, which is the civil thing here. He piled on a whole stack of green fodder on his nimble little donkey, and hoisted himself atop of it without saddle or bridle. The fodder was for Mustapha Aga, and we trotted home across the beautiful green barley fields, to the amazement of some European young men out shooting. We did look a curious pair, certainly, with my English saddle and bridle, habit, hat, and feather, on horseback, and Sidi Omar's brown shirt, brown legs, and white turban, guiding his donkey with his chibouk. We were laughing very merrily, too, over my blundering Arabic. Young Heathcote and Strutt called here, but were hurrying up on the river. I shall see more of them when they come down. Young Strutt is so like his mother, I knew him in the street. I would like to give him a fantasia, but it is not proper for a woman to send for the dancing girls, and as I am the friend of the Maun police magistrate, the Cadi, and the respectable people here, I cannot do what is indecent in their eyes. It is quite enough that they approve my unveiled face, and my associating with men. That is my custom, and they think no harm of it. Tomorrow or next day Ramadan begins at the first sight of the new moon. It is a great nuisance, because everybody is cross. Omar did not keep it last year, but this year he will, and if he spoils my dinners, who can blame him? There was a wedding close by here last night, and about 10 o'clock all the women passed under my windows with cries of joy as Zagharit down to the river. I find on inquiry that in Upper Egypt, as soon as the bridegroom has taken the face of his bride, the women take her down to see the Nile. They have not yet forgotten that the old god is the giver of increase, it seems. I have been reading Miss Martineau's book. The descriptions are excellent, but she evidently knew and cared nothing about the people, and had the feeling of most English people here, that the difference of manners is a sort of impassable gulf, the truth being that their feelings and passions are just like our own. It is curious that all the old books of travels I have read mention the natives of strange countries in a far more natural tone, and with more attempt to discriminate character than modern ones, e.g. Niebuhr's Travels here and in Arabia, Cook's Voyages, and many others. Have we grown so very civilized since 100 years that outlandish people seem like mere puppets, and not like real human beings? Miss M.'s bigotry against Copts and Greeks is droll enough, compared to her very proper reverence for him who sleeps in Philae, and her attack upon harems outrageous. She implies that they are brothels. I must admit that I have not seen a Turkish harem, and she apparently saw no other, and yet she fancies the morals of Turkey to be superior to those of Egypt. It is not possible for a woman to explain all the limitations to which ordinary people do subject themselves. Great men I know nothing of, but women can and do, without blame, sue their husbands in law for the full payment of debt, and demand a divorce if they please in default. Very often a man marries a second wife out of duty to provide for a brother's widow and children, or the like. Of course licentious men act loosely, as elsewhere. Kulluhum beni Adam, we are all sons of Adam, as Sheykh Yussuf says constantly, bad bad and good good, and modern travellers show strange ignorance in talking of foreign natives in the lump, as they nearly all do. Monday. I have just heard that poor Sheykh Mohammed died yesterday, and was as usual buried at once. I had not been well for a few days, and Sheykh Yussuf took care that I should not know of his brother's death. He went to Mustapha Aga and told him not to tell anyone in my house till I was better, because he knew what was in my stomach towards his family, and feared I should be made worse by the news. And how often I have been advised not to meddle with sick Arabs, because they are sure to suspect a Christian of poisoning those who die! I do grieve for the graceful, handsome young creature and his old father. Omar was vexed at not knowing of his death, because he would have liked to help carry him to the grave. I have at last learned the alphabet in Arabic, and can write it tidily, but now I am in a fix for want of a dictionary, and have written to Hekekian Bey to buy me one in Cairo. Sheykh Yussuf knows not a word of English, and Omar can't read or write, and has no notion of grammar or of word-for-word interpretation, and it is very slow work. When I walk through the court of the mosque I give the customary coppers to the little boys who are spelling away loudly under the arcade, Abba Sheda o Nusbeitin, Ibba Sheda o Heftadin, etc., with a keen sympathy with their difficulties and well-smudged tin slates. An additional evil is that the Arabic books printed in England, and at English presses here, require a 40 horsepower microscope to distinguish a letter. The ciphering is like ours, but with other figures, and I felt very stupid when I discovered how I had reckoned Arab fashion from right to left all my life, and never observed the fact. However, they cast down a column of figures from top to bottom. I am just called away by some poor men who want me to speak to the English travellers about shooting their pigeons. It is very thoughtless, but it is in great measure the fault of the servants and dragomans who think that they must not venture to tell their masters that pigeons are private property. I have a great mind to put a notice on the wall of my house about it. Here, where there are never less than 8 or 10 boats lying for 3 full months, the loss to the fellaheen is serious, and our consul Mustapha Aga is afraid to say anything. I have given my neighbours permission to call the pigeons mine, as they roost in flocks on my roof, and go out and say that the Sitt objects to her poultry being shot, especially as I have had them shot off my balcony as they sat there. I got a note from M. Mounier yesterday, inviting me to go and stay at El Mutana, Halim Pasha's great estate, near Edfu, and offering to send his dahabieh for me. I will certainly go as soon as the weather is decidedly hot. It is now very warm and pleasant. If I find Thebes too hot as summer advances I must drop down and return to Cairo, or try Suez, which I hear is excellent in summer, bracing desert air. But it is very tempting to stay here, splendid cool house, food extremely cheap, about £1 a week for 3 of us for fish, bread, butter, meat, milk, eggs and vegetables, all grocery of course, I brought with me, no trouble, rest and civil neighbours. I feel very disinclined to move unless I am baked out, and it takes a good deal to bake me. The only fear is the Khamseen wind. I do not feel very well. I don't ail anything in particular, blood spitting frequent, but very slight, much less cough, But I am so weak and good for nothing. I seldom feel able to go out, or do more than sit in the balcony on one side or other of the house. I have no donkey here, the hired ones are so very bad and so dear, but I have written Mounier to try and get me one at El Moutaneh and send it down in one of Halim Pasha's corn boats. There is no comfort like a donkey always ready. If I have to send for Mustapha's horse, I feel lazy and fancy it is too much trouble, unless I can just go when I want. I have received a letter from Alexandria of January 8. What dreadful weather! We feel the ghost of it here in our 3 weeks of cold. Sometimes I feel as if I must go back to you all coûte de coûte, but I know it would be of no use to try it in the summer. I long for more news of you and my chicks. End of letter 29. Read by Sibella Denton. All LibriVox files are in the public domain. For more information, please visit LibriVox.org.